Good day, everyone. Welcome back to our English lessons for grade 4. Today, we will be discussing the introduction to the story Moonwalk, written by Ben Bover, and we will be doing some high frequency words that is in the story. So, Moonwalk is basically a science fiction type of story, and science fiction is basically based on science. What does a science fiction story teach us? It teaches us how life would look in the future. So, in this story, Moonhawk, there are two brothers and their father. The father basically worked as a scientist on the moon, and he was on his way to check out the telescope. And the two brothers went for a walk, and they came to a Ryle, which is a large channel in the moon, and one of them fell and got severely injured. And at the end, the older brother helped the younger brother, and they reached the shelter again. So that is basically a 2 minute synopsis of what happens in the story Moonhawk. Okay. Secondly, I want to point out to the question of the week. The question of the week for this story, Moonhawk, was what are the risks that one takes when one goes on a journey to the moon? What are the risks if one walks on the moon? Now, the first thing that comes to my mind is that it's not like walking on Earth. The terrain, the surface of the moon is much different to what the surface is on Earth. And secondly, there is no gravity on the moon. There's gravity on Earth, which means if you should walk on Earth, you won't fly up like Superman. You won't raise into the air like Superman. But if you walk on the moon, you would raise up and you will come down. Why? Because there is no gravity on the moon. And thirdly, we are surrounded with oxygen on Earth, whereas on the moon, there's no oxygen, which means if one wants to walk on the moon, you need a suit that will provide oxygen, like this little boy on the cover of the story. And also, the temperatures are much different to what it is on Earth. The temperatures are very, very much high when the sun rises on the moon, and when it sets, it is very, very cold. Temperatures like 255 degrees Celsius when the sun is out, and when the sun is, when it sets, it's very, very cold, minus 200 degrees Celsius. So the conditions are much, much more different to what we experience ourselves on Earth. So therefore, walking with suits that keep us cool and gives us the correct temperatures is very, very important on the moon. And also providing oxygen for us to survive and walk on the moon is also very, very important. So that is the type of risk that one undergoes or undertakes when one walks on the moon. And if we don't have these equipment, then obviously it will not be possible without getting injured to walk on the moon. So the first vocab that basically comes into the story is called runt. A runt is a small cat or animal from a litter. So when an animal gives birth and the litter is five, six, seven animals, if we use a cat, for example, then the smallest of that litter would be called a runt. Whether it is a dog, whether it is any other type of animal, the smallest from the litter would be known as runt. The second vocab that is prevalent in this throughout the story is taunted. Taunted over here means to provoke or challenge someone with insulting or bad remarks. If we look at this picture over here, Krillin from Dragon Ball Z is taunting his opponent, okay, and making fun of his opponent and also giving out bad remarks. And that is what taunted means. Taunted means to provoke someone and to challenge someone with bad remarks. The third high frequency word or vocab that is prevalent in the story is called summoning. Summoning means to order or call someone to be present. If we look at this picture over here, we see that The Rock is speaking to John Cena. So The Rock summoned John Cena because he wanted to set up a fight to see who would be the world wrestling champion. Okay. So what The Rock did was he took the mic and he called and he summoned John Cena, and John Cena came to the squared circle and accepted the challenge, and we all know who won the battle. The next word that is very, very much prevalent in the story is called loomed. Loomed means to appear vaguely, especially large and threatening. So if we look at this picture over here, the moon, it looks very, very scary and it is huge, and it appeared vaguely, not in its entire form, not completely, only a little bit to basically scare us and threaten us. So that is what loom means. Loomed means to appear vaguely and also threatening at the same time. And the next word that is prevalent in the story is ryle. A ryle is basically a narrow channel on the moon's surface. If we look at this picture over here, we have a ryle here on the moon called the Hadley ryle. The ryle, to our minds that we are used to, the word that we are used to using on Earth is a trench. A trench is basically a channel dug before we build houses, etc. Now, a tiny or a large channel, a large trench on the moon is called a ryle. And then we have a trench, a long narrow ditch. A trench is what we would dig before building something, like maybe a house or any structure like that, to keep the house stable and stable. And then we have trudge. Trudge means to walk slowly with heavy steps. When we look at this picture over here, we got two little kids over here that is walking in the snow, and they are very tired, and they're walking with long steps, and they're almost stumbling, and they are trudging, walking slowly in the snow to reach their destination. And then the last word that is very, very much prevalent in the story is called staggered. Staggered means to walk or move unsteadily, as if about to fall. When we look at babies, after they started crawling, they would walk slowly and then they would fall now and then because they're not steady. They're not used to walking, okay, like grown-ups. So when the little ones, when the babies, they walk and they fall afterwards, that is staggered. Okay, so they're walking and they're falling all the time. Okay, and that is what we refer to as staggered. Okay, so to wrap up today's lesson, we did an introduction to the story Moonwalk, and also we discussed the genre, which was science fiction, that teaches us a little bit more about how life would look like in the future. And also we did a brief synopsis of the story, which basically revolves around two little brothers that go for a walk on the moon while their dad is checking out a new telescope that is being built on the moon. And through the walking on the moon, they go through a little bit of adventure. And then after that, we discussed the high frequency words, the vocabs that is basically prevalent throughout the story with its definitions. Until then, have a good day. Thank you so much for your time.